Welcome to the online class of Civics, Chapter 2, Constitutional Design. Before we start the class, I would like to remind you about our pre-midterm exam, which will be starting from 3rd August onwards. You should get ready for the pre-midterm test. It will be taken for 50 marks. 25 marks will be for economics and civics. There will be multiple choice questions of maybe 20 marks. Then there will be short answer questions. Then there will be long answer questions. In order to attempt multiple choice questions, you should read the chapter thoroughly. Our chapters for the pre-midterm exam: Economics Chapter 1, the story of village Palampur. Chapter 2, People as a Resource. And in civics we will have what is democracy and why democracy. These 3 chapters will come for your exam. So you should read the chapter minimum 2 or 3 times so that you are able to write any type of questions which will come for the exam. Direct question can come, indirect questions can come. So please understand the lesson, please understand the concept thoroughly and write the exam. The exam may be taken in the form of maybe oral exam, maybe Google form, maybe PDF, whatever maybe we will let you know. So please study seriously. Each day you must spend 3 to 4 hours for studying and write the exam neatly. And another important thing, please go through the diary page and understand the homework or the assignment that is given to you. And whenever you send any notes to the teachers, you should mention your name, your class and your division. Then only we can recognize who is sending. And in case you are not able to write exam, you must communicate the same to the concerned teachers. So let us come to chapter 2, Constitutional Design. In the previous class we studied what is constitution. We studied why there is a need for constitution. We studied what are the factors which led to the making of the Constitution of India. We also studied why there is a need for accepting, why the people of India accept the Constitution which was made some 50 years ago. So, having understood why there is a need for a Constitution, let us move on to some other questions. This is just for your knowledge. Let us study what was apartheid. Apartheid was an official policy of racial discrimination which was practiced in South Africa between 1948 and 1989. Apartheid means a racial discrimination which was practiced in South Africa. So the black people faced racial discrimination. The colored people of South Africa, the Indians who lived there, they faced this problem of racial discrimination. So that is apartheid. Apartheid means an official policy of racial discrimination practiced in South Africa between 1948 and 1989. How did the white minority and the black majority agree to draw a new common constitution for South Africa? Let us find out When you understand the background of South Africa, we must understand the majority of people in South Africa were Africans, blacks. The white was a minority. Even then, they ruled over South Africa for many years. So, how did the white people and the black people agree to draw a new constitution for South Africa? Point number one. Point number one, the whites and the blacks sat together, leaving behind their brutal past to make a new constitution acceptable to all. The black people and the white people, they sat together, forgetting about their past, forgetting about the racial discrimination which was practiced in South Africa, forgetting about the cruelties committed on the blacks in South Africa. They sat together to make a new constitution acceptable to both blacks and whites. Next point, the whites agreed to the principle of majority rule. The whites agreed to the principle of majority rule. The whites agreed that, to the principle of majority rule and that of one person, one vote. One person will have one vote. They also agreed to accept some basic rights for the poor and the workers. They agreed to accept some basic, some fundamental rights for the poor people and the workers. They should enjoy some rights, some legal rights. The blacks agreed that the majority rule would not be absolute and the majority would not take away the property of the whites. That was the fear of the whites. The whites had a lot of property in South Africa. They had their own houses, they had their own shops, they had their own maybe farmhouses. So that was a fear of the whites that their property will be taken away by the black people. So the black people agreed that majority rule would not be an absolute rule, and this majority, the blacks, they would not do any harm to the property of the whites. The whites' property will be protected, their lives will be protected, and they will not indulge in any kind of activity which will cause harm to the property of the whites. So that was another step taken towards that one. After 2 years of debate and discussion, they came out with the finest constitution giving extensive rights to its citizens. After 2 years of debate and discussion. So it took almost 2 years, Indian constitution, it took almost 2 years, 11 months, 17 days or something. After 2 years of debate and discussion, they came out with the finest constitution giving extensive, vast rights to its citizens. So that is the beauty of how these blacks and white people sat together to make a new constitution for South Africa. Nelson Mandela was in jail for the last 28 years. When he was released, African National Congress won the election and they came to power. And how all that happened, that is history. Now let us find out, just for our knowledge, how were the blacks discriminated in South Africa. Not only blacks, we can say the colored Indians. How were the blacks discriminated in South Africa? The apartheid system was very oppressive for the blacks, very oppressive, very cruel for the blacks. Not only for the blacks, even for colored Indians. First point, they were forbidden from living in white areas. They were forbidden. They were not allowed to live in the areas where white people live. White people had separate residential areas and the black people had separate residential areas. Just like we have in some of the villages in India, the upper caste people, they have a separate residential area, and the Dalits, the lower caste people, they may be having another residential area. maybe little away from other people's, upper caste people's residential areas. The third point, they could work in white areas only if they had permission. In order to work in areas of white people, in their residential areas or shops or anywhere, the black people had to get a special permission, work permit to work there. Trains, buses, hotels, schools, colleges, cinema halls, beaches, public toilets, etc. were separate for the blacks and whites. There were separate trains for the blacks and whites, separate buses for the transport system for the blacks and whites. The black students could not go to the schools where the white students studied. Cinema halls were separate for them, beaches were separate for them, the public toilets were separate for them. So that was something unimaginable today. And the next point, they could not even visit the churches where the whites worshipped. So there were separate churches for the black people. The black people could not enter the churches where the white people worshipped. Another point, they could not even form associations or protest against the terrible treatment. The black people or the colored people, they could not even form associations. They could not protest against any terrible, against this kind of terrible treatment or oppressive system. So they could not organize any meetings, any protest activity, any strike. Nothing of that sort was allowed. That was dealt with an iron hand. You can see in the picture. You can see in the picture. You can see in the picture. Native Indians and colored Indians. If you enter these premises at night, you will be listed as missing. Armed guards shoot on sight. Savage dogs devour the corpse. You have been warned. So this is a warning. Some places you will find this kind of notices. Natives, that is the black people and Indians and colored people, if you enter this premises, these places at night, you will be listed as missing. Armed guards will shoot at sight, and the dogs will eat their corpses, dead bodies. So you can find there are banks even, Europeans only. And for non-Europeans there was another bank. So you will find area is very clearly set aside. This is white area. So only in these areas only the white people live, the other areas other people will live. Let us find out next question. Describe some efforts made by the people of South Africa to fight against apartheid system. What efforts were made by the people of South Africa to fight against apartheid system? First one, the African National Congress, ANC, led the struggle against the policies of segregation. Segregation means racial discrimination, which was practiced in South Africa. You get a new word, note down that word, segregation. To segregate means separate. So, in South Africa, the black and white people and colored Indians were separated. So, the African National Congress led this struggle under the leadership of Nelson Mandela. Led the struggle against the policies of segregation or racial discrimination. Since the 1950s, the blacks and the colored people fought against apartheid system. Since 1915, they started their struggle against this apartheid system or racial discrimination. They launched protest marches and strikes. We organized protest marches and even strikes. Next point, many workers, unions and the Communist Party joined the movement. So The black people and the colored people were supported by many workers' unions and Communist Party also joined the movement. And let us see the next point. Many whites also joined ANC. ANC means African National Congress to oppose apartheid. Many white people also was against this the cruel system, against the suppressive system of racial discrimination. So they also joined ANC means African National Congress to oppose apartheid. So you can see in the picture how they were protesting. You can see the picture of Nelson Mandela, who spent almost 26 to 28 years in jail. And you can find they are raising their slogans: "Vote for all, equal pay for all." Okay, and they are all coming out and listening to Nelson Mandela and organizing mass protest against the racial discrimination, apartheid in South Africa. From these pictures, it is very clear how this majority people came out on the streets to protest against the racial discrimination or apartheid in South Africa. Let us come to the next question. Describe the composition of the Constituent Assembly. Okay, describe the composition of the Constituent Assembly. You know that who made the Constitution? The Constitution was made by members of the Constituent Assembly. It was a very Herculean task to make the Constitution of India. We have to take into account various aspects of India, the diverse culture, language, religion, and the different type of people living in India. All these factors they have to take into account before making the Constitution of India. So let us come to the first point. The drafting of the Constitution was done by an assembly of elected representatives called the Constituent Assembly. Election to the Constituent Assembly was held in July 1946. So first one, the drafting of the Constitution was done by an assembly of elected representatives. Around 299 members were there. And election to the Constituent Assembly was held in July 1946. Election was held to the Constituent Assembly. Its first meeting was held in December 1946. The Constituent Assembly had 299 members. There were around 299 members in the Constituent Assembly. It took almost 2 years, 11 months and 17 days to complete the Constitution of India. So you can see the first meeting was held in December 1946 and the Constituent Assembly had 299 members from various walks of life. They were taken from various parts of India. There were national leaders, there were freedom fighters, there were lawyers, and there were scientists. There were all kinds of people were involved in the making of the Constitution of India. So there were people chosen from various religions, language, culture, regions. All kinds of people participated in the making of the Constitution of India. That is why we studied earlier that why should we accept the Constitution which was made 50 years ago? Because it is a Constitution made by the people of India. That is why at the end of the preamble we say, or in the beginning of the preamble we say, we the people of India having solemnly decided to make India a democratic, sovereign, socialist republic and to give to its citizens justice, liberty, equality, fraternity. And at the end we say, we hereby adopt this one and we give this Constitution to ourselves. So from that we understand this Constitution was made by a Constitution was made by us, and it was made by the representatives of people. all people could not be called, and it was very difficult to make a constitution for India. So today we have gone through many questions, apartheid, and how they made the blacks and whites made the constitution of India. How did the black people fought for the rights in South Africa? We studied how racial discrimination was practiced in South Africa, how they protested against this racial discrimination in South Africa, and we also learned how the Constitution Assembly was formed in India to make the Constitution of India. How many members were there? How much time they took to make the Constitution of India? It took almost 2 years, 11 months, and 11 days to complete the Constitution of India. So as we study the features, we know our constitution is one of the lengthiest constitution in the world, and we also have taken various things from various countries. Those good things which we found in other constitutions we have adopted. So Bill of Rights, parliamentary democracy, socialist ideas of socialism, all this we have taken from other countries. Let us come to the next point, the sixth point. The Constituent Assembly adopted the Constitution on 26 November 1949. Even though the Constituent Assembly adopted the Constitution on 26 November 1929, we must understand it came into effect only on 26 January 1950. So by 26 January 1950, our Constitution came into force. So we studied why India is called a Republic Day. We celebrate Republic Day because our Constitution came into force on 26 January 1950. So 26 January is a red letter day, very important day in the history of India, because our Constitution came into force on 26 January 1950. And the Constituent Assembly worked in a systematic and open and consensual manner to make the Constitution of India. So I want all the students to write down these questions, and at the same time you must get ready for your pre-midterm exam seriously, and you should write the exam in a serious manner and try to get a score maximum marks. All should try to get above 80 marks. So I wish you all the best.